Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today you are in for another treat. So, let's get started. Yun Xiao ignored the challenger's arrogant words and calmly proceeded to walk into the chamber. His indifference only fueled the other man's anger further. With a burst of energy, the martial apprentice leapt into the air, intending to attack Yun Xiao from above with his full strength. However, Yun Xiao, ever composed, turned swiftly. In an instant, a faint but powerful dragon-like aura surged behind him. The opponent froze momentarily, startled by the unexpected pressure. Yun Xiao smirked, his movements fluid and deliberate as he grabbed the attacker's arm midair and struck him with a shoulder slam. The force sent the challenger stumbling backward, his expression contorted in anger as he struggled to regain balance. Before the situation could escalate further, a calm voice rang out, breaking the tension. "Senior Yu," the voice addressed, drawing everyone's attention. The speaker was revealed to be a girl, Luo Lan. Her sudden appearance caused a ripple among the onlookers. Senior Yu hesitated, his bravado fading slightly. "Luo Lan, give me 5 more minutes," he said, his voice faltering. "I'll get this room for you." Luo Lan shook her head and replied firmly, "Just leave it." He got the room first. Yun Xiao, who had remained silent, turned his gaze toward Luo Lan. His expression flickered briefly with recognition. A memory surged to the forefront of his mind. One he had buried deep. It was of the time he had once proposed to Luo Lan. In the memory, Luo Lan had coldly rejected him, walking away without hesitation. "My husband must be a strong martial artist," she had said, her tone unwavering. "Even if you come from a renowned background, you are still trash in the martial arts world. If you can defeat me one day, I might consider it." The scene shifted back to the present, where Luo Lan, her tone laced with disdain, remarked, "I didn't think you'd start training a technique when you can't even strengthen yourself. But you will never beat me. The gap between us will only grow wider." Yun Xiao, unfazed by her words, turned his back on her. His voice was calm and dismissive as he stepped into the chamber. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to train." The door closed behind him with a loud thud, leaving Luo Lan and the onlookers outside. Luo Lan sighed and glanced at Senior Yu. "If you had practiced your technique properly, you wouldn't have lost to Yun Xiao," she said pointedly before turning to leave. Her words sparked a wave of quiet laughter among the bystanders, further humiliating Senior Yu, whose face flushed red with anger. Inside the chamber, Yun Xiao surveyed his surroundings. The room was bare except for 2 training statues forged from black iron. Both statues were covered in scratches and dents, evidence of countless students using them over the years. Yun Xiao ran his hand across the surface of one statue and muttered to himself, "These statues must be centuries old." Shrugging off his coat, he placed it neatly to the side. His expression grew serious as he thought to himself, "It'll take me at least 10 years to return to the 9th realm. I can't waste any time. I need to push forward immediately." He positioned himself in front of one of the statues, ready to test his current strength. Gathering his focus, Yun Xiao performed the first movement of the Tyrant Body Tempering technique, channeling all his energy into a single, decisive punch aimed at the iron figure. The impact echoed through the chamber, marking the start of his rigorous training. The scene shifts, showing Yun Xiao sitting within the tenfold gravity training chamber. His body was bruised, his clothes tattered, and sweat drenched his form. Yet, his eyes gleamed with determination. He muttered to himself, "Under tenfold gravity, the practice efficiency of the first style of the Tyrant Body Tempering technique has truly multiplied." Struggling to his feet, Yun Xiao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and continued, "In 3 days, I'll be able to match the physical strength of a martial apprentice. When that happens, I'll have at least a 60% chance to successfully unclog my meridians Without hesitation, he resumed his rigorous practice. 3 days later, the door to the training chamber creaked open. Yun Xiao staggered out, his body covered in blood, his breathing labored, and his clothing shredded to near rags. The bystanders outside were stunned into silence as they beheld his battered yet determined figure. One of them, unable to contain his curiosity, peeked into the chamber Yun Xiao had just vacated. His shocked voice broke the tense atmosphere. "The statues, they're shattered." This exclamation drew the attention of the other students. When they rushed to look inside, their jaws dropped. The ancient black iron statues, which had stood unbroken for centuries, were reduced to piles of rubble. Yun Xiao's practice had utterly destroyed them. The scene shifted to show Yun Xiao after he had cleaned himself up. His body, transformed by the tyrant body tempering technique, now radiated a subtle but palpable strength. Admiring his progress, Yun Xiao thought to himself, "This technique is indeed the #1 body tempering method in the world. As long as I can obtain a few low-level pills, my cultivation speed will increase dramatically." Sitting down in a meditative posture, Yun Xiao began to regulate his breathing and channel his energy. Suddenly, he sensed movement behind him. Without turning his head, he shot out a hand and caught an incoming fist. Twisting the arm in a fluid motion, Yun Xiao flipped the attacker over, slamming them face-first into the ground. The groaning figure turned out to be Han, one of Yun Xiao's friends. Struggling to his feet while clutching his wrist, Han grimaced, "It's not broken, is it?" Yun Xiao smirked and replied casually, "You can't blame me for reacting. You're the one who snuck up on me?" Dusting himself off, Han stepped closer to Yun Xiao, his expression turning serious. "Yun Xiao, you might be in trouble," he warned. "Lan Fei has disappeared over the past few days. I heard he's cultivating in seclusion to break into the first origin realm." Yun Xiao's brow furrowed slightly at the name, but his tone remained calm. "Lan Fei, the boss of Snakeface and Monkey Man?" Han nodded emphatically, his face full of concern. "Yes, and he might be coming for revenge. Do you understand what it means to reach the origin realm? It means he's condensed his yang qi and broken into the ranks of a true martial warrior. There's a massive gap between us apprentices and someone at his level." Yun Xiao dismissed Han's concerns with a nonchalant wave. His expression grew resolute. "That's not important right now. I need you to do something for me." Han raised an eyebrow, surprised by Yun Xiao's calm demeanor. What could be more important than preparing for Lan Fei? Yun Xiao's tone turned lighthearted, but his eyes gleamed mischievously. "Han, lend me all your money." Reluctantly, Han handed over a pouch of coins. "You're going to bleed me dry, Yun Xiao," he complained half-heartedly as he turned to leave. Before he could take more than a step, a loud bang echoed through the room. The door was kicked open with such force that it sent Han flying across the room. He landed near Yun Xiao's feet unconscious. A clear imprint of a boot was visible on his chest. Moments later, another figure was sent tumbling into the room. Chin crashed to the ground beside Han, equally unconscious, with blood trickling from his mouth and a tooth lying nearby. Stepping into the room was Lan Fei, his aura surging with an oppressive intensity. His eyes burned with rage as he strode toward Yun Xiao. "You damn trash," he bellowed. "How dare you touch my men? Today, I'll cripple you completely." Lan Fei's words hung in the air like a death sentence, and his power surged around him, a vivid display of his newly condensed yang qi. Yun Xiao, however, remained calm, his expression unyielding as he prepared to face the enraged martial warrior. Yun Xiao bent down to check on Han and Chun, carefully assessing their injuries. After confirming that neither of them was in a life-threatening condition, he rose to his feet, his expression cold and unyielding. Turning his gaze toward Lan Fei, he finally broke his silence. "Do you really think you're special, just because you can glow a little?" Yun Xiao's voice carried a mocking tone as he stepped forward, his movements deliberate and firm. "You think you can cripple me? It's been a long time since I've heard such an arrogant statement." Lan Fei felt an inexplicable sense of unease as Yun Xiao approached. The pressure radiating from Yun Xiao was palpable, and for the first time, Lan Fei hesitated. Out of fear, he quickly drew his sword and lunged forward, choosing to strike first. Yun Xiao, unfazed, drew his own sword in response. The two swords clashed with a deafening sound, sending a shower of sparks flying through the air. The force of the impact was immense, pushing Yun Xiao back and leaving a deep cut on his blade, a testament to the strength behind Lan Fei's strike. Lan Fei and the bystanders were shocked. How was it possible for Yun Xiao, someone without even a single chakra opened, to withstand such a powerful blow? Yun Xiao, however, remained calm. He let out a low laugh, his confidence unwavering. Pointing his sword at Lan Fei, he taunted, "Come, let me give you some pointers." This remark made Lan Fei snap. Furious, he charged at Yun Xiao again, putting all his strength into his attack. But Yun Xiao's movements were precise and swift. With a single, well-timed maneuver, he disarmed Lan Fei, sending his sword flying across the room. Lan Fei stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Before Lan Fei could recover, Yun Xiao delivered a powerful kick to his face, sending him crashing into the wall. Blood dripped from Lan Fei's nose as he slumped to the ground in a daze. Suddenly, the sound of metal striking the ground echoed. Yun Xiao had driven his sword into the floor, right between Lan Fei's legs. Lan Fei's face turned pale as the reality of the situation sank in. Panic replaced his anger, and his voice trembled with a mix of fear and desperation. "You dare touch me," he spat out, trying to sound threatening despite his situation. Yun Xiao, unmoved by the empty threat, pressed the tip of his sword slightly closer to Lan Fei's groin. The gesture was enough to shatter whatever composure Lan Fei had left. His attitude shifted in an instant. "Please, spare me. I was wrong," he begged, his voice cracking. The scene left the onlookers stunned. Even Lan Fei's subordinates, who had been silently watching, instinctively shielded their groins as if they, too, could feel the pain. Yun Xiao remained silent for a moment, his cold gaze locked on Lan Fei. Then, with a sly grin on his face, the air around him heavy with dominance. "If you want to keep your little bird intact, hand over some money," Yun Xiao said, his voice dripping with mockery. Lan Fei, trembling with fear, quickly removed his spatial ring and handed it to Yun Xiao without hesitation. Yun Xiao turned his gaze toward Lan Fei's underlings, his sword casually pointing in their direction. "You lot," he said, "if you want to walk out of here in one piece, you'd better follow his example." The underlings, terrified, scrambled to comply. In no time, a pile of valuable items formed at Yun Xiao's feet, rings, pendants, and other treasures. Yun Xiao examined the haul, his eyes catching on a jade pendant hanging around Lan Fei's waist. With a single fluid motion of his sword, he severed the pendant's string and caught it in his hand. "This pendant is quite nice," Yun Xiao said, inspecting it. "I'll be taking it." Lan Fei's eyes widened in panic as he fell to his knees. "No, please, you can take anything else, but not that pendant. It's been passed down in my family for generations. Only the core members of the Lan family are allowed to wear it. If I lose it, my family will skin me alive." Yun Xiao raised an eyebrow, his sword lazily pointing at one of Lan Fei's underlings. "I could return it," he said, his tone cold and calculating. "But in exchange, I'll make your subordinates end up like those two." He gestured towards Monkey Man and Snake Face. Lan Fei's underlings, frozen in fear, looked toward their leader with pleading eyes. Lan Fei clenched his fists, torn between his loyalty to his family and the lives of his men. After a long moment, he gritted his teeth and spoke. "This jade pendant is extremely important to me," he said, his voice shaking. "But when compared to my brothers, it's nothing." The declaration left his underlings visibly moved, their eyes filled with gratitude and emotion. Lan Fei, regaining his composure, gave a sharp command. "Let's go." Without sparing another glance at Yun Xiao, he turned and led his group away, his dignity in tatters. Yun Xiao watched them leave, his eyes narrowing as he examined the pendant in his hand. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "It really is the five-colored divine stone," he muttered. Slipping the pendant into his pocket, he spoke aloud, his voice cutting through the silence. "You've been watching long enough. It's about time you showed yourself." A shadow suddenly leaped from the roof, landing gracefully behind Yunxiao. The figure was Jia Rong, his expression a mix of annoyance and disbelief. He had witnessed everything that had just transpired, but he couldn't wrap his mind around it. "I saw it all," Jia Rong thought to himself, "but I still can't figure out how Yunxiao defeated Lan Fei. I came here planning to restrain him and force him to tell me the cure. But now, I don't even have the confidence to fight him, even with my cultivation at mid-tier warrior level." Yunxiao turned to face Jia Rong, his eyes sharp. He asked coldly, "Did you gather everything I asked for?" Jia Rong, suppressing his irritation, handed Yunxiao a list. "I've only managed to gather 6 batches, he said defensively. "Some of the herbs you want are nearly impossible to find." 6 batches, Yunxiao repeated, his tone neutral. "Fine, hand them over. But before anything else, heal them first." He nodded toward Han and Chun, who still lay unconscious nearby. Jia Rong's face twisted in anger. "Who do you think you are? Do you think you can order me around like this?" Yunxiao didn't flinch. "If you don't like it, you can leave," he replied curtly. His tone made it clear that he wouldn't entertain any further complaints. Jia Rong's frustration boiled under the surface. "I'm a rank 1 alchemist with a prestigious reputation," he thought bitterly. "How did it come to this? Taking orders from a mere kid?" But he knew he had no choice. Reluctantly, he fed Han and Chun healing pills, ensuring they were stabilized. "I'm done," Jia Rong said, straightening up. His eyes locked on Yunxiao with a mix of anger and desperation. "Now, it's about time you told me the cure." Yunxiao wrote something down on a piece of paper, folded it neatly, and casually tossed it toward Jia Rong. The force behind the throw made the paper whistle through the air, and Jia Rong caught it with both hands, his palms stinging slightly from the impact. His eyes narrowed in shock as he thought, "This brat, just how strong is he?" Unfolding the paper, Jia Rong scanned its contents, his expression gradually shifting from suspicion to astonishment. His thoughts raced as he realized the value of what he held. "This prescription, it's incredible. Yunxiao wasn't lying, it's completely reliable." With reverence, Jia Rong carefully slipped the prescription into his pocket and turned to leave. "Now that I've received what I was promised, we're even," he said flatly. Yunxiao's voice, calm but cutting, stopped Jia Rong in his tracks. "This prescription will remove the toxins of both the blood flame stone and the blood orchids from your body without causing any side effects. However, when the toxins were corroding your body, didn't you notice your soul power weakening every time you practiced alchemy? Didn't it feel as though your soul power was deteriorating?" Jia Rong's heart sank as he listened. Yunxiao's words struck a nerve, and panic flickered across his face. Yunxiao continued, his tone clinical yet unyielding. "The deterioration of your soul power makes cultivation hundreds of times harder. If left unchecked, there's little hope for you to recover your rank 1 alchemist status, let alone advance to rank 2. Jia Rong turned sharply, flustered. "What are you saying? What do you mean by this?" he demanded. Yunxiao met his gaze with a cold, confident expression. "I know a way to restore your soul power and make you a true rank 1 alchemist within 5 days. Jia Rong blinked, stunned. 5 days? You must be joking. Even if my soul power hadn't deteriorated, breaking through to rank 1 in such a short time is impossible." Yunxiao's eyes narrowed. "Who do you think you are? Do you think I would waste my time lying to you?" Jia Rong hesitated, swallowing his indignation. What do you want in return for your help?" he asked, cautiously. Yunxiao smirked, his tone bold and unyielding. "Be my servant." Jia Rong's face flushed with anger. "A servant? You're just a kid and you expect me, a rank 1 alchemist, to be your servant? Absolutely not." Yunxiao didn't flinch. "Do you honestly believe you're qualified to be my servant?" His voice was laced with disdain. "You'll serve me for 5 days. Once the 5 days are up, you'll scram." Jia Rong opened his mouth to protest, but before he could speak, Yunxiao unleashed his soul pressure. The invisible force weighed down on Jia Rong, driving him to his knees. cold sweat dripped down his face as his body trembled under the immense pressure. Yunxiao's gaze was icy and domineering. "I'll give you 3 breaths to decide. Do you accept my offer or not?" Jia Rong's mind raced. "This soul pressure, it far surpasses mine. If I accept, there's a chance I could rise to the top. If I don't, I might regret it for the rest of my life." Gritting his teeth, he muttered, I accept." The pressure vanished instantly. Yunxiao nodded approvingly. "Not bad. You were decisive. You'll come to realize how lucky you are to have made the right choice." He tossed another piece of paper toward Jiarong, who caught it with shaky hands. "Follow the instructions on that paper. If you can't advance to rank 1 within 5 days, it means you lack the aptitude and aren't qualified to be my servant." Jiarong unfolded the paper, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Soul cultivation arts," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This is really a soul cultivation technique." Yunxiao glanced at him indifferently. "It's just a low-level soul cultivation technique, but it's enough for you to fully recover and break through within 5 days. If you behave well, I won't be stingy with rewards in the future." Turning away, Yunxiao added nonchalantly, "You may leave. I'll find you at the Alchemist Association if I need anything." Jia Rong stood frozen for a moment before bowing deeply out of respect. Without another word, he left the academy, his mind racing. The most important aspect of an alchemist is their soul power, he thought, his footsteps quickening. Ordinary alchemists can only increase it at an excruciatingly slow pace through constant crafting. But this soul cultivation technique, it directly refines soul power. Now, Jiarong, have such a precious technique in my possession. He clenched the paper tightly in his hands, his thoughts turbulent. Yunxiao handed me something so priceless, as if it were a trivial item he found on the street. Not even the imperial palace would be this generous. With this technique, even serving him as a slave for years wouldn't be a loss? As he approached the towering alchemy tower, Jiarong's thoughts lingered on Yunxiao. Just who is this young Master Yun? The more I think about it, the more unfathomable. And that wraps up today's recap. For another such treat, subscribe to the channel so that I can bring more such content to you, and you don't miss the daily uploads. Do it. Subscribe. Please subscribe, and don't forget to like, comment, and share the video. See you with another such treat.